The National Director of Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batohi, testifies before Parliament. Meanwhile, at the Madlanga Commission, we hear more damning evidence about the Ekurhuleni police. And is the state's case on shaky ground against Duduzile Zuma? All that and more. Stick around and let's get into it. SMWX fam, if you ever need to hire a car, check out Pace Car Rental. Proudly South African company with the best range of cars for any need. Whether you need a car for a day, a month, or long term, Pace makes it simple and easy with flexible payment options including cash, card, or EFT. From buckies to minibuses, they've got you covered. But here's the best part. Because you watch SMWX, use promo code SMWX for 5% off your next rental. Now, let's get back to it. Spread the fire. Welcome back to the Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh experience, or SMWX. Make sure you subscribe to help us reach that next milestone of 400,000 subscribers. So good to have you back, fam. Well, so much happening in our country once again. It was a busy news day, and in today's episode, I'd like to take you through the parliamentary testimony of National Director of Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batohi, who faced a barrage of questions from MPs. We'll also look at what happened in the Madlanga Commission today, and a couple of other news items, including the case against Duduzile Zuma, which doesn't seem to be going very well for the prosecution. Let's begin in Parliament, where we had the National Director of Public Prosecutions. This is the head or the boss of all the prosecutors in South Africa, testifying around General Mkhwanazi's allegations. And of course, this matters because prosecutors were some of the people, and the NPA was one of the institutions which Mkhwanazi said had been influenced by this criminal syndicate, which is trying to run significant portions of our government. The first interesting thing she said was that she received some disturbing intelligence that there was some kind of plot from criminal syndicates to influence her and potentially compromise her. And I want you to take a look at this clip because it raises a lot of questions.
I had received confidential intelligence that there was a very concerted attempt to compromise members of the prosecuting authority. Also, concerted attempts to undermine and attack the National Director, and by individuals that are seeking to undermine the rule of law in this country. I'm not able to say who gave me this intelligence, but it was not passage talk. It was a formal meeting that I had with a particular agency, a member from a particular agency, and who gave me this information because the person thought it was important that as the head of the NPA, I should be aware of this attempts to undermine the work of the NPA. These were very serious. I was informed that the matter will be reported to the President, but I immediately informed the Minister of Justice about this and had a meeting with her when I briefed her on what I had been told. I also, at some time later after that, when the President was available, met with him and briefed him about my concerns about this. And my understanding is that there was not a, and this is my understanding, I'm not sure how these agencies work, but that there wasn't a particular tasking to look into the NPA. But I asked the President, I said to him, it's important that we understand what is going on and that there should be a tasking by our intelligence services to properly look into this matter. And that was the situation.
So that's quite a serious set of allegations off the bat. We've got the National Director of Public Prosecutions saying someone from an agency sits her down in a meeting and says there is an attempt to compromise not only the NPA, but also you. And she says this is more than just gossip. It was actually a formal meeting by a member from this agency with her. She took it seriously enough that she escalated this matter to the president. And she said to the president, hey, I've got this information that there's an attempt to compromise me and compromise the NPA. And we need to look seriously into this. Now, at the time of recording, no MP has followed up on what she said here. And again, how many times does the president's name need to be mentioned before he gets put on the witness list of this committee? Because we need to know, what did she tell him? And what did he do with the information that she told him? But we then saw a recurring theme here in that she was quite guarded about the information she was willing to share publicly, perhaps for good reason. But this is something we've seen in this Mkhwanazi committee, that people don't feel at liberty to divulge names, and therefore things get left quite vague. So all the public knows is there was a meeting, there was this information shared at a meeting, and then she had a meeting with the president. Now, furthermore, you'll see that things came to a bit of a head in the committee quite early on because MPs became frustrated with the lack of detail and the lack of names being provided. So take a look at this, because she went on to say that she did have information in her possession that someone senior in the NPA could be involved with criminal syndicates. That action had been taken against this person for a previous infringement, but she didn't have full corroboration for this. In other words, there wasn't further evidence to fully back up this claim. But MPs wanted to know, who is this senior person? And she wasn't prepared to say it in public. Take a look at this exchange.
A rotten NPA, it's very dangerous to our constitutional democracy she speaks about. A rotten NPA is dangerous to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. So you cannot protect an individual over the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. Just her failure to respond to this question, she must take a bag and go. She's not going to be useful to us. We are asking names. That's why we are here. We are told there are people who kept people is names. Who are those people? We want names of drug cartels. We want names of corrupt police. We want names of corrupt judges. We want names of corrupt prosecutors. That is the whole idea of us being here. So you call a witness. When she left home, she left saying she's going to do what here? She's coming to read a policy statement in an inquiry. Yeah, we even discuss boardroom. We're discussing pillow talk. Yeah. Yeah. That's how far we go. Now we're being told, no, just a name. We can't be given a name of a prosecutor who's suspended. I know that there is a prosecutor called Chauke in Gauteng who's put on a special leave or suspended by the President of the Republic of South Africa. It is the President who communicated that publicly. What is so difficult for an NDPP to refer to such a case and say, for instance, we've got this case that is on, but I can't give details. This is what it involves. A lot of people came here and said so. This is a public information. But to come and say, I won't give you names, even on matters that are public, that is having taken a conscious decision that I'm not going to cooperate with them and I'm going to show them that they can't do anything. She's completely undermining us. To put it mildly, she's undermining us, and she left her home having taken a decision to come and undermine us here.
So as you can see, Julius Malema representing largely the sentiment in the House, not taking kindly to the lack of this name and the refusal to divulge this name. But Batohi again remained firm and said, based on her understandings of fairness, based on the fact that some of these allegations were still built on relatively sandy foundations, she wasn't going to divulge that name publicly. And this is a wider problem with this parliamentary process. It's supposed to be public, but because it's public, people often are unwilling to actually give the names, because that, of course, has major spillover effects for the people who are implicated. And I might add that even Mkhwanazi did this. Mkhwanazi refused to mention names of the big five. So did Masemula. And Mkhwanazi also said that there were judges involved, but again, he refused to mention the names. He said, he'll maybe talk about it in the Intelligence Committee or something like that. So we have had this before, and this is not the first time a witness has refused to mention names, but we are still, as a public, left in the dark as to who the senior prosecutorial figure is who has allegations of being involved with organized crime is. So there was that. I must say, today actually didn't deal much with the Mkhwanazi allegations, probably because Batohi is not directly involved. She hasn't been implicated. She's giving more of an institutional perspective from the NPA. But boy, did MPs raise every kind of issue with which they had a problem. Now, it ranged from the relevant to the absurd. But there was an interesting moment that I found where Batohi actually dealt with the question of Phala Phala. Remember, the NPA declined to prosecute President Ramaphosa on Phala Phala. Batohi is the head of this institution, so she presumably would have a view, and I think she was slightly mistaken in her response to this question. Take a look at this exchange between her and an MK MP.
I beg your pardon?
Why have you not acted on Phala Phala?
Because there are processes to be followed in the legal process. The DPP takes a decision on the matter or not. And of course, anybody is entitled to ask that the National Director review this matter. That review process is not kicked in, but I'm trying to get clarity on whether Honorable Malema might be correct, whether the DPP in fact took a decision in this matter, and whether there is a review process in the SCCU head office. But I want to get clarity on that. But for now, to be clear through you, Chair, the matter is not on my desk. I have never considered this matter or the merits of this matter.
So the ethical leader in you doesn't say do something about Phala Phala. Anyway.
There are processes at the moment that are happening. The matter is at the head office.
The ethical leader in you.
That's correct. There are processes and the matter is at the SCCU in the head office.
So the ethical leader in you only says that. It doesn't say do something about Phala Phala. It only says just know where the matter is.
That's not correct. If the DPP has done anything wrong in taking the decision, then of course I must intervene. And there are processes, the matter is with the SCCU head office at the moment.
So this came on the back of an exchange before this where she said there hadn't been a decision not to prosecute Phala Phala, and Julius Malema again intervened and said that's not true. And in fact, it is in fact the case that Limpopo Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Mukadi Ivy Tenga, said this decision not to prosecute on Phala Phala follows a comprehensive investigative process that was conducted by the DPCI following a complaint laid by Mr. Arthur Fraser. So there has been an official decision by the NPA not to prosecute this, and Batohi seemed to be unaware of this, which I found quite surprising given how important this matter is. And the reason it's important is precisely because it's easy to prosecute opposition politicians. It's easy to prosecute even ANC politicians who have fallen from grace and who are no longer holding high office. But the real test of the rule of law is whether an institution like the NPA can be independent enough to prosecute high-level serving politicians, which they've currently failed to do. Not just Ramaphosa, but of course a raft of politicians who continue to serve in the cabinet right now. So I found that quite interesting and quite surprising, but it did seem as if as the testimony went on, and by the way, it's still going on in Parliament as I record, she moved to clarify this. So how do we look at Batohi's evidence so far? I think she is a person whose heart is in the right place, who has tried her best to right a very shaky ship which she inherited. Someone who is always intent on preserving fairness, but who perhaps, maybe through no fault of her own, has still presided over an NPA that has ultimately failed to fully turn itself around in her tenure. She is someone who is a stickler for process, a stickler for the rules, and that can be quite frustrating when we want details and we want names. But also, it does seem as if on some of these high-level cases, maybe, and she argued in the committee it's not her role to do so, but hasn't really taken a particular specific interest in where these matters are. She sees her role as more one of oversight, more one of institutional reform. So, a fascinating picture and a portrait of one of the most important leaders in South Africa over the last 7 years. And the questions continue. I'm sure there'll be a fascinating conversation with various other MPs. There was an interesting exchange with Glenys Breitenbach, for instance, and for example. But let's move from Parliament. We'll come back maybe tomorrow with some more of the Batohi and what I couldn't get to before I started recording today. Because we need to go to the Madlanga Commission, the place where files get dropped, where CCTV footage gets revealed, where WhatsApp messages get broadcast to the nation. Hey, did you see this on Twitter, people? Apparently, the now suspended, by the way, Ekurhuleni Deputy Chief of Police Julius Mkhwanazi, who's come in for a lot of flack and has suffered under many allegations. Apparently, this video is of him, and it came from a Twitter account which has subsequently been deleted since this material emerged. Take a look at this. He seems to be in very celebratory mood. So, I mean, that's quite fascinating. The problem, of course, here being that Mkhwanazi again nails his ANC colors to the mast here. We've heard that Brown Mahotsi was a member of the ANC. This is a real problem, people. Everyone who is implicated here is a huge ANC supporter or ANC member, and it shows the role of this party. The ANC has continued to try to distance itself from these allegations, but the implicated parties keep bringing the ANC back into the picture. And we have to investigate this nexus between the state, the criminal justice system, but also the ANC. And clearly criminal syndicates have decided that first they have to penetrate the ANC. Once you penetrate the ANC, you can then penetrate the state. And once you penetrate the state, then all hell can break loose in terms of criminality and being protected from any consequences for your actions. So Mr. Mbalula, who spent a long time trying to distance himself from Brown Mahotsi, now has another person to distance himself from. But the distancing isn't going to work because it's clear that there is ANC membership here. We know Kat Matlala was arranging ANC tables at January 8th. Let's see whether there are ANC links with Katiso Mulife. So it's not looking good. It's just not a good look. It's not a good look for the governing party at this moment. Now today, in addition, we heard more allegations from the Ekurhuleni Police Department. And in a nutshell, and in conclusion, the picture that has been painted is that there is a parallel unit within this Ekurhuleni Police Department that basically is operating as it chooses and potentially unlawfully, illegally, and with impunity. And the evidence we heard today was that one Julius Mkhwanazi is allegedly at the center of leading this parallel unit towards these inappropriate ends. So today we heard more detail. Remember yesterday we had that CCTV footage of copper cable theft where police were involved. There were other cases, precious gems being stolen to the value of 45 million rand. Today we zoomed into the internal dynamics of the department and we saw that there was an attempt to, for example, get the fingerprints of police, right? So that they could check whether police are involved in criminality. A normal vetting thing. I would hope that there would be regular checks of police to see if anyone in the ranks has been involved in criminality. Well, there was a resistance effort by Julius Mkhwanazi and others who said they didn't want their fingerprints taken, etc. When this vetting process eventually happened, without Mkhwanazi's unit taking place, a number of people were found to have been criminally convicted not just charged, within the police. Take a look at this clip.
Excel spreadsheet containing all the employees of Ekurhuleni Metro Police in 2022 that was used to capture the results of the criminal record vetting. Everything covered in green is when no illicit activity was recorded, and that is a total of 3,174 people. The ones colored in a light beige color is the southern region who has submitted late because of their large volumes, and they've already submitted 102 SAPs, but we haven't received the results of that 102 yet back. And then there's a group of illicit activity in a dark red, which is 275 officers that have illicit activity recorded, and then the 211 is still outstanding, which gives us a total of 3,762 at that stage.
So that was Mr. Spies outlining that they had done this check to see, and they had found people who were not only had been convicted, also people who were before court, people with criminal records. And when they went into the seriousness of these charges, there were actually serious crimes that had been committed by people who are still serving, from murder to robbery to sexual offenses, unlawful possession, just a raft of crimes, which is shocking, scary. This is the police we're talking about, people. You don't want the police to be harboring convicted criminals. I think we can all agree on that. And yet this is what we are hearing. And this is just one local police department. You know, what's really becoming apparent here is that it feels like every arm and finger of the South African government has some kind of compromised unit within it. Whether you look nationally, provincially, locally, there is some syndicate which is feasting on some part of the South African government. And we're just getting one narrow glimpse into the criminal justice system. But if we were to review the entire thing, I wonder how much of everything in South Africa is just compromised at this point. So it was a concerning day of testimony at the Madlanga Commission, as is customary these days. We got some evidence from Xolani Nziza, who is the former divisional head of basically HR, and he's just started his testimony, but he spoke about the amount of intimidation when obviously within HR, when you're trying to take internal disciplinary steps against parallel networks or rogue units within the police, you are meted with intimidation and you get worried that you're going to be the subject of violent threats. So it's not as easy as just saying, well, let's have an internal disciplinary hearing, because there's a plan for that. And the plan is to intimidate those who hold the hearing so that internal accountability cannot see the light of day. So that's the update in terms of our commissions and committees. Tomorrow, Parliament won't be sitting because of the medium-term budget policy statement. So we won't have the ad hoc committee. We'll continue to get testimony from the Madlanga Commission. Now, in other news, we have the state bringing a case against Duduzile Zuma for supposedly inciting violence in the July riots. Now, I must say, I'm quite shocked by the reporting, because you watch a case and then sometimes you see the reporting of a case, having studied law, and you're just like, but that's not a fair representation of what happened in the case today. So what happened in the case today is that the state's case is hanging by a thread so far. The first two witnesses have buckled under cross-examination. Today, the complainant herself was forced to admit that a lot of the videos she brought as evidence didn't show what she claimed that they showed, that some of the statements that were made didn't reflect any kind of violent intent. And so if the witnesses for the state themselves, the key witnesses, are lining up and falling and failing to corroborate their claims, it comes back to our earlier question about the NPA, right? Why is the NPA able to bring a case like this, but they're not able to bring a case against high-ranking serving politicians? How come they can bring failing cases against opposition politicians, but not winning cases against the people who actually hold power? in the South African government right now. And so far, it's looking like it's going to be a resounding embarrassment for the state before this court. And they're going to be faced with another judgment which calls into question the NPA's capacity to prosecute. And so there is still a lingering question about NPA priorities. Shamila Batohi cuts a confident and a competent figure. But the reality on the ground in terms of the NPA's own priorities and some of the decisions of DPPs in the provinces and lower level prosecutors, to my mind, still leaves a lot to be desired. And so if you really want to know what's going on in that case, that's what I think happened today. It was not a good day for the prosecution. Let me put it that way. Cool. Whistle stop tour around other news. Matlala's cases have been centralized. It's not just the Tebogo Tobejane attempted murder anymore. There are a few other cases that have been wrapped up in one mega case against Matlala, and now it's been moved to the High Court. 29th of January is the day when that case will recommence. And Senzo Mkhunu has been placed on special leave or taken special leave from the ANC now. So he's on special leave from two institutions, from government, gardening leave, ANC, gardening leave. He's got two gardens, which he has to tend to now. Fam, I hope you have fun tending your garden wherever you're watching, and help us reach 400,000 subscribers. We're nearly there. Like, share, subscribe, tag SMWX, use hashtag SMWX on social media, and let's continue to push the national conversation on the new Citizens broadcaster. Have a good one, fam. See you on the next one. Aye.